For decades, Boyd Coddington wasn't just a car builder. He was the architect of an entire era of hot rodding. His designs were unmistakable. His craftsmanship was envied. His shop became a pilgrimage site for anyone who loved custom cars. But behind the polished paint jobs, the billet wheels, and the glimmer of televised success, Boyd's world was anything but stable. Lawsuits, bankruptcy, employee walkouts, explosive confrontations, and an unexpected tragedy that brought everything crashing down long before the industry was ready to let him go. Even today, many fans still ask the same question: what really happened to Boyd Coddington? The rise, the fall, the rivalries, the financial collapse, the health crisis, it all forms a story far more complicated than the TV cameras ever captured. And the descent began long before viewers ever noticed the cracks forming beneath the surface. In the 1980s and early 1990s, Boyd was the undisputed king of hot rodding. His signature style, clean lines, shaved handles, billet wheels, radical stance, redefined the industry. Every major show wanted a Boyd build. Every aspiring builder wanted to be Boyd. His cars weren't just custom vehicles, they were rolling sculptures, and his most famous builds, like the Boydster series, set standards still copied today. By the time he entered television with American Hot Rod, Boyd had already built an empire. His shop employed dozens. His cars won awards across the globe. His name became a brand synonymous with excellence. But while the world admired his precision and artistry, few understood the relentless weight that came with being a perfectionist, running a rapidly expanding business. And that pressure would soon push Boyd into decisions that would change his life forever. As demand for Boyd's craftsmanship exploded, his business ballooned. More employees, more builds, more deadlines, more expectations. The problem wasn't talent. Boyd had plenty. The problem was scale. Hot rod shops aren't simple to manage. Builds take months. Customers are demanding. Materials are expensive, and Boyd's standards left no room for shortcuts. But instead of slowing down, he accelerated. More projects came in, more tools were purchased, more space was leased. Overhead costs grew faster than revenue, and the once profitable shop began to drown in expenses. Boyd pushed his team harder, expecting his signature masterpieces to be built at a pace that would strain even the best in the industry. And when tension boils inside the shop walls, cracks begin forming where loyalty once lived. By 1998, those cracks were impossible to hide. Boyd filed for bankruptcy, a seismic moment in the automotive world. To outsiders, it seemed impossible. How could the greatest custom builder of his generation lose everything? But the financial truth was brutal. Unpaid taxes, overwhelming debt, economic pressure, and the burden of expanding too quickly caught up all at once. The government stepped in. Assets were seized. Employees were left scrambling for work. The legend of the industry had hit rock bottom, but Boyd wasn't the type to stay down. He refused to let financial ruin define him. Within months, he began sketching new designs, planning new builds, and strategizing how to rebuild his empire from the ashes. What no one realized was that his comeback would spark a chain reaction of conflicts that changed the hot rod world forever. In the early 2000s, Boyd staged one of the most dramatic comebacks the custom car world had ever seen. His new shop started small, but grew quickly as old customers returned and new ones lined up to be part of his rebirth. Then came the opportunity that would change everything: television. The Discovery Channel wanted a show centered around Boyd, his shop, and his intense, perfection-driven approach to car building. American Hot Rod became an instant hit, but success came with a cost. TV production schedules clashed with Boyd's meticulous methods. Deadlines became impossibly tight. Drama, real drama, erupted daily. The shop environment, once intense but manageable, turned volatile as the cameras rolled. People walked out. Arguments escalated. The show highlighted Boyd's brilliance, but also exposed his temper, his pressure-driven leadership style, and the cracks in an already overstretched operation. And it was during this turbulent TV era that one relationship reached a breaking point, a split that would define the next chapter of Boyd's career. Chip Foose wasn't just another employee, he was the rising star inside Boyd's shop. a designer and fabricator with extraordinary talent and a calm professional demeanor. Together, they created some of the most iconic builds in hot rod history. But as Boyd's business expanded and the stress intensified, the relationship between master and protege began to strain. Disagreements emerged over credit, creative direction, and management decisions. The pressure cooker environment of Boyd's collapsing finances and looming deadlines only made things worse. The industry buzzed with rumors, fans sensed tension, employees whispered about conflicts, but none of them knew just how big the fallout would become or how deeply it would impact Boyd's future. Because once the split happened, the ripples reached farther than anyone expected. The relationship between Boyd Coddington and Chip Foose was once one of the most powerful partnerships in hot rodding. Foose, a gifted designer with a calm temperament and razor-sharp precision, complemented Boyd's intensity and bold creative direction. Together, they built cars that dominated award shows and redefined custom automotive aesthetics. But as Boyd's first financial collapse hit and his business spiraled, cracks began forming between the two. Foose, eager to protect his own future, felt increasingly concerned about the shop's financial instability. Boyd, under immense pressure, became more demanding and impatient. There were disagreements about credit, ownership of designs, and the direction of new projects. Friends became rivals in a matter of months, and when Boyd's bankruptcy forced major restructuring, Foose was suddenly out, leaving the shop in 1998 under circumstances still debated to this day. For many fans, this was the moment the custom car world split into two kingdoms, Boyd loyalists and Foose loyalists. Both sides accused the other of betrayal, but what mattered most was that Boyd's shop lost its most promising young star at the worst possible moment. And Foose's departure didn't just reshape Boyd's company, it reshaped the entire industry. Despite losing Foose, Boyd rebounded with astonishing speed. When American Hot Rod debuted, it pulled viewers into a world of high-pressure deadlines, demanding builds, and Boyd's relentless standards. The show captured raw tension, arguments in the paint booth, walkouts on the shop floor, and Boyd pushing harder than ever to meet Discovery Channel's aggressive production schedule. The drama made the show a massive hit, but it came at a cost. Employees burned out, crews rotated constantly, fans noticed the revolving door of staff and wondered why nobody seemed to last long under Boyd's management. Some criticized his temper, others admired his pursuit of perfection. But inside the shop, the workload was crushing and the pace was unsustainable. Still, every completed build reminded the world why Boyd Coddington was a legend. His cars were breathtaking, flawless paint, elegant lines, bold innovation. Even under impossible pressure, Boyd delivered masterpieces. But the cameras hid what was beginning to happen behind the scenes, a crisis far more destructive than creative disagreements. As American Hot Rod grew more popular, the financial expectations behind the scenes skyrocketed. Television brings exposure, but it also brings expenses. The shop had to scale quickly to meet deadlines for filming, SEMA deliveries, and client demands. This meant hiring more staff, buying more equipment, and increasing production capacity. Yet the TV timeline didn't always align with real-world business numbers. Jobs that could take 6 to 12 months were now being pushed into 8-week windows. Mistakes became expensive. Rework became routine. And as the shop stretched itself thin again, money began leaking faster than it came in. The financial strain sparked legal complications. Suppliers demanded overdue payments. Employees filed disputes over hours and conditions. Contracts tightened. The empire Boyd rebuilt after his first bankruptcy was showing signs of collapsing once more, this time under the weight of fame instead of failure. And while Boyd fought to keep his shop alive, another battle was happening inside his own body. After Foose left Boyd's shop, his career exploded. Foose design grew rapidly. His show overhauling became a cultural phenomenon. Awards piled up. Fans praised his calm leadership style as the opposite of Boyd's intensity. The contrast, whether fair or not, made viewers compare the two constantly. For Boyd, it was a complicated emotional blow. Foose had been like family, a partner in creativity, a designer who could bring Boyd's visions to life. Losing him hurt the business, but losing the relationship cut far deeper. And seeing Foose celebrated as the new face of hot rodding intensified the pressure Boyd was already under. Some fans wrongly assumed Boyd resented Foose. Others believed Foose abandoned Boyd during crisis. But the truth is more nuanced. The toxic environment of financial collapse pushed both men into survival mode. Their split became one of the most dramatic rifts in custom car history, and it created a permanent divide in the fan base. Yet while the world debated the feud, something far more threatening was happening behind the shop doors. Years of high stress, long hours, and constant production demands began wearing down Boyd's health. He suffered from diabetes, a condition he struggled to manage while juggling the enormous weight of his shop and TV commitments. The illness worsened, intensifying fatigue and making the daily grind of the show even more difficult. Crew members would later recall days when Boyd pushed through unbearable pain to finish a build for filming. Deadlines didn't pause for his condition. Sponsors didn't wait. Networks didn't slow down. So Boyd kept going, even as his body screamed for rest. By 2007, his health had deteriorated to the point where close friends urged him to step away, at least temporarily, but Boyd refused. The shop needed him. The show needed him. His employees needed him. What he didn't know was that the next medical crisis would arrive suddenly, and it would be the one he couldn't fight through. By late 2007, the signs were unmistakable. Boyd's energy had faded. His mobility slowed. Even his famously sharp voice, the one that once commanded entire rooms, began losing its edge. Diabetes, unmanaged stress, and years of physical strain were now converging into a single, devastating decline. His inner circle later admitted that Boyd often hid the severity of his condition from the crew. He didn't want sympathy. He didn't want excuses. He wanted the shop to run, the builds to ship, and the show to continue. But every week became harder than the last. The long filming days, the constant deadlines, the pressure of carrying an entire TV production on his shoulders. All of it weighed heavily on a body that could no longer withstand the strain. Still, Boyd refused to step away. It was as if he believed the empire he built would collapse the moment he took his hands off the wheel. He didn't know that the collapse would come anyway, and much sooner than anyone expected. In early 2008, Boyd was rushed to the hospital with a rapidly worsening infection linked to his diabetes. The complications escalated quickly. Doctors performed emergency surgery, then more procedures in the days that followed. The brutality of the illness stunned even those close to him. Boyd had always seemed indestructible, the unshakable giant of hot rodding, the man who survived bankruptcy, rivalries, and impossible deadlines. But this battle was different. His body was exhausted. As word spread through the automotive community, panic and disbelief followed. Thousands of fans wrote messages of support. Fellow builders paused their projects. His team held the shop together while anxiously waiting for updates. Everyone expected Boyd to fight through it, because he always had. But for the first time, Boyd Coddington couldn't fight his way back. On February 27, 2008, Boyd Coddington passed away at the age of 63. The news hit the automotive world like a thunderclap. Builders cried, fans mourned, competitors expressed heartfelt tributes. Even people who clashed with him publicly admitted the undeniable truth. Boyd was a once-in-a-generation visionary. His death wasn't just the loss of a builder, it was the end of an era. Shock turned into reflection. People replayed old episodes of American Hot Rod. They looked back at his early magazine features. They revisited his award-winning builds. Everything felt heavier, more meaningful, as the world suddenly realized how much Boyd had shaped their love of cars. But his death wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a complicated aftermath. Almost immediately after Boyd's passing, the question arose, what would happen to the shop without him? The truth was harsh. Boyd was the glue holding the entire operation together, the creative force, the brand personality, the decision-maker, and the negotiator. Without him, the already fragile business structure couldn't survive. Debts still lingered from past expansions. Production commitments from the show hung unresolved. Employees were uncertain of their future. Despite every effort to keep the doors open, the shop began to unwind. Builds were halted, projects were transferred. Staff moved on. The workshop that had once buzzed with energy and innovation fell silent. Fans called it the end of an era. And it was. Boyd's shop wasn't just a business. It was a landmark of American car culture. Seeing it close was like watching the lights go out on a chapter of history. But even in the darkness, something unexpected began to happen. In the months that followed, tributes poured in from every corner of the car world. Legendary builders, celebrities, collectors, and everyday enthusiasts shared memories of Boyd's craftsmanship and influence. Even rivals acknowledged his brilliance. Chip Foose, who had once been at odds with him, offered a respectful and heartfelt tribute, a reminder that their conflict, while dramatic, never erased the impact Boyd had on Foose's career. Car shows dedicated entire displays to Boyd's most iconic builds. The Boyd look, smooth bodies, bright paint, billet wheels, became a timeless aesthetic copied worldwide. Auction prices for his cars surged as collectors sought pieces of his legacy. Many young builders began citing Boyd as their primary inspiration, even if they were too young to remember the early days of his career. Because Boyd Coddington didn't just build cars, he built generations of car builders. Behind the public reaction was a profound private grief. Family, close friends, and longtime employees struggled to process the sudden loss. Some described Boyd as demanding, fiery, and intense, but also fiercely loyal, generous, and deeply committed to anyone who proved themselves in his shop. His wife Jo remained an anchor for the community, helping preserve Boyd's legacy and supporting the projects he touched. Former employees who once clashed with Boyd found themselves reminiscing about the lessons he taught them, lessons about precision, pride, and pushing boundaries. Even the moments of conflict, in hindsight, became part of a larger narrative about what it meant to build something truly exceptional. Boyd's absence was enormous, but the imprint he left behind was even bigger. In the years following his passing, Boyd Coddington's impact became clearer than ever. Builders who once worked under his intense leadership realized how deeply his methods had shaped them. His insistence on precision, down to the last curve, seam, and weld, became a standard that many shops adopted. Boyd didn't just elevate custom car building, he professionalized it. He brought artistry into an industry that had long been dominated by muscle and mechanics. The cars that came out of his shop were instantly recognizable. They had a presence, a sort of sculpted elegance that made them stand out without ever needing to shout for attention. His influence echoed across workshops in America, Japan, Europe, Australia, and beyond. Even young builders entering the scene today unknowingly reference Boyd's design language. He didn't just define an era, he defined an aesthetic that refuses to fade. For years, fans framed the Boyd versus Foose conflict as a rivalry, but as time passed, it became clear that their stories were more intertwined than opposed. Chip Foose went on to become one of the most recognizable names in custom car culture thanks to overhauling his design studio and his warm persona. But in countless interviews, Foose acknowledged the influence Boyd had on his career, both through collaboration and through conflict. Boyd pushed Foose harder than most would dare. He expected perfection, innovation, and discipline. And though their split was painful, Foose carried many of Boyd's philosophies into his own work. In a way, Foose became one of Boyd's most visible legacies, a bridge between two eras of custom car design, with Boyd's fingerprints all over the foundations. Their story wasn't merely a conflict, it was a catalyst for greatness on both sides. Before Boyd, hot rodding was largely seen as gritty, loud, and rough around the edges. He changed that. He made hot rods luxurious, refined, elegant, cars that could sit in an art museum just as easily as they could cruise down a boulevard. This shift drew wealthy collectors into the scene. bringing resources that helped fuel a renaissance in American automotive customization. He also revolutionized billet wheels, a signature trend that swept the industry. Love them or not, billet wheels became a staple of custom builds, a visual shorthand for quality and craftsmanship. Boyd's Wheel Company became its own empire, pushing CNC machining technology into mainstream car culture. Today, dozens of wheel companies trace their roots back to innovations Boyd either created or popularized. He didn't just follow trends, he invented them. When people speak of Boyd Coddington today, they don't talk about the bankruptcy, the walkouts, or the drama of American hot rod as much as they used to. Instead, they talk about the look, the style, the influence. They talk about the way Boyd shaped their childhood, their craft, their passion for metal and engines, and creativity. His cars continue to circulate through auctions and private collections, often selling for six-figure prices. Car shows still dedicate special displays to him. Builders recreate his iconic designs. Some restorers even specialize in Boyd-era projects, proof of how influential his work remains. The next generation of automotive designers studies his builds to understand the geometry, the stance, and the color theory that made his creations so distinct. People don't just remember Boyd, they study him. While the world often saw Boyd's fiery temper on camera, those close to him describe a different man off the clock, someone who cared deeply about his team, someone who helped young fabricators get their start, someone who, despite his tough exterior, believed in giving people second chances. They recall long nights in the shop where Boyd stayed late just to motivate a struggling builder. They recall moments of humor, generosity, and unexpected kindness. The truth is, Boyd's intensity came from a place of passion. He wanted excellence because he believed custom cars deserved nothing less. He worked the way he lived, fast, bold, and unapologetically driven. And even when that drive clashed with others, it never came from a lack of devotion to his craft. At his core, Boyd was a man who loved cars so fiercely that it shaped every part of his life. Boyd Coddington's story is not a simple rise and fall. It is not defined by controversies or rivalries or the chaos of television drama. His story is about ambition, the kind that reshapes industries. It's about resilience, the kind that rebuilds empires after bankruptcy. And it's about influence, the kind that continues shaping builders long after the man is gone. He left behind award-winning cars, legendary designs, and a blueprint for how to turn raw metal into moving art. But more importantly, he left behind a generation of craftsmen who now carry his torch. Some learned under him, some learned from watching him, and some learned from competing against him. But all of them, in some way, are connected to the path he forged. Boyd didn't get to see how deeply his legacy would extend. He didn't get to see the world honor him after his passing. He didn't get to see young builders call him an inspiration decades later. But the impact remains in every flawless curve, every polished billet wheel, every custom build that draws from the aesthetic he created. And that is what truly happened to Boyd Coddington. Not a fall, but a transformation. Not an ending, but a legacy that refuses to die. Because legends in metal don't fade, they echo.